Hey everybody, how's it going? In this video, I'm going to be reviewing Star Wars Ahsoka, the Patterson Cut. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Ahsoka, the TV series, was a series that began Disney Plus last year. It was an 8-part series, one of the multiple streaming TV series based on the Star Wars universe. The character of Ahsoka Tano debuted in the animated Clone Wars series that began in 2008, and that ran for 5 seasons. And it was cancelled just before Disney took over Lucasfilm, and then a few years later they brought it back and finished the last season of Clone Wars, which was excellent, by the way. The last couple of episodes of the Clone Wars animated series was fantastic. It's some of the best Star Wars content ever created. Now, the character of Ahsoka Tano was created by Dave Filoni, and he was the animation director of the Clone Wars animated series. So even though the Clone Wars is set in George Lucas's Star Wars universe, the Clone Wars really was his baby, and Ahsoka Tano really is his creation. And it's interesting how the character of Ahsoka Tano, when she first debuted in the Clone Wars animated movie, which was basically a pilot for the TV series, she did not make a good first impression. She came across as an annoying little brat. I was going, okay, this is going to be a bit rough, this character isn't going to go anywhere, it's a bit annoying, and it was really kiddie orientated, and I didn't think I'd watch the actual series. But a funny thing happened. The animated Clone Wars series was absolutely amazing. As a TV show, the Clone Wars animated series, which started off very much as a kiddie-orientated show, it matured and there were some terrific storylines to go along with the excellent animation and voice acting. The character of Ahsoka Tano became a fan favourite. As the series matured, so did the character, due to a small little ingredient called good writing. Really, the character really matured and evolved from being an annoying little brat to just one of the best characters. In fact, I would say that the character of Ahsoka Tano is one of the best characters in Star Wars ever. That's how good she is. And the character appeared later on in the Rebels TV series, which I did not watch actually. I saw the first one or two episodes, and the animation seemed to be a step down from the Clone Wars animated series, and I just didn't like it at all. But from what I understand, Ahsoka came into the show later on and had confrontation with Darth Vader. But in the Clone Wars animated series, they were very much teacher and apprentice, and they had a great relationship in that show, even though some of the dialogue could be a little bit cringe at times.
So I thought you said you'd never have a Padawan.
There's been a mix-up. The youngling isn't with me.
Stop calling me that. You're stuck with me, Sky Guy.
What did you just call me?
Now, in live action, the character of Ahsoka is played by Rosario Dawson, and the way they introduced this character into live action was in one episode of The Mandalorian, one of the best episodes of The Mandalorian actually, and appropriately enough, that episode was directed by Dave Filoni. That was his live action filmmaking debut after being the animation director for the Clone Wars animated series. And Rosario Dawson stepped into that role like she'd been playing it for a long, long time. She was great casting as the, not so elderly, but the mature Ahsoka Tano, so to speak. And the interesting thing about the Ahsoka TV show is that it's not just a spin-off, but it's a sequel to the Rebels animated series, which is either an advantage or a disadvantage depending on whether you've seen the Rebels TV series or not. And I watched a few episodes, and like a lot of Disney Plus streaming shows, there was a lot of padding, and what I mean by that, it was just a very slow-paced show. There was a lot of unnecessary pauses in between dialogue. It was just a lot of shoe leather. Shoe leather, as they say in the TV industry, is just where they pad out the running time by having lots of extraneous scenes of people walking back and forth and lots of pauses in between dialogue. Now, Kai Patterson is a visual effects artist and director who worked his magic on the Obi-Wan TV show a few years back. Now, the Obi-Wan TV show is another series that suffered from the same problems as Ahsoka. Pacing problems, unnecessary characters, and he re-edited that series into a 2.5-hour movie, and he did a fantastic job. He fixed almost all the problems with that series, and as far as I'm concerned, that Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, as it is now, the Patterson Cut, is canon. So I was very excited to see that Patterson was going to turn his talents to the Ahsoka TV show, and he's done a great job. So the way I'm going to do this first is that I'm going to review this version of Ahsoka as a movie, and I think later on in this review I'll talk about some of the changes, and that'll be a spoiler section I guess, but I'm going to review it as a movie. So Ahsoka is set after season 2 of The Mandalorian, and it shows Ahsoka Tano trying to track down Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now, Grand Admiral Thrawn is a character that was first introduced in the expanded universe of Star Wars novels back in 1994, early mid-1990s, and Grand Admiral Thrawn is a terrific villain, one of the best villains in Star Wars in literary terms. He's got such a devious, intelligent mind. He's basically the kind of character that he defeats an entire race of people by studying their art, and he's always planning several steps ahead. He's so intelligent that he even accounts for battles that he's going to lose, that he knows that he's going to lose, which is what makes him such an interesting villain. At the end of the Rebels TV show, as I understand, he was stranded on the other side of the galaxy, which kind of partly explains why he's not in the original trilogy. Speaking as someone who watched only a few episodes of the Ahsoka TV show, this movie edit is a revelation. Patterson has done it again. Like he did with his Obi-Wan Kenobi edit, he's improved the pacing, dialogue scenes flow better, he's reordered certain scenes just to make the movie flow much better as a movie. And he experimented with this in his Obi-Wan Kenobi edit, in that not only has he improved the pacing and re-edited scenes, he's also taken a knife to the series color grading. Now, I didn't realise this until I compared the two versions, but the colour palette of the original series was very grey. That's one of the first things you notice when you watch this cut, is that the colour is very saturated, and he's done a much better job of colour grading the footage. It's much more in keeping in line with the original trilogy of Star Wars movies. Like, the original Star Wars movies were very saturated colour, they were very colourful, and he keeps it in that kind of palette. And on top of all that, not only has he re-edited scenes and dialogue, not only has he taken a knife to the colour grading, but he's also added his own visual effects. Patterson has added 115 new visual effects shots himself. Now, I didn't catch all of them, but I'll talk about some of those later on in the spoiler section of this review. Looking at Ahsoka as a movie, unlike the Obi-Wan show, which was very cheap looking, there's a lot of high production value to the Ahsoka show. There's lots of great lightsaber fights, there's lots of really good visual effects that are only enhanced by Patterson's edits and colour grading. However, there are still a few character flaws. The character of Sabine is not just a Mandalorian, but she's also Force sensitive and she has Jedi training. Not only has she got indestructible Beskar Mandalorian armor, she's also got plot armor. Nothing can beat her. Although there's one huge improvement which I should mention, and this isn't really a spoiler because it was one of the dumbest scenes in the original series, was the fact that she had this lightsaber fight with this character named Shin, and she got run through with a lightsaber. She got impaled and she survived. They got to her in time and they sent her to hospital and she was fine the next day. Just look at Qui-Gon Jinn when he got impaled by Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace. He died nearly straight away. But there's a funny thing in these Disney plus Star Wars shows that lightsabers all of a sudden aren't lethal anymore. I mean, the original Obi-Wan series, Reva got stabbed twice. She got run through twice by Darth Vader and she survived, which was ridiculous. And spoiler alert for the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie version, Patterson edited it in such a way that she died from her injuries. And this version of Ahsoka, that scene is entirely cut out. It's completely cut from the storyline. Those two characters don't meet on that planet where they have that lightsaber duel. She doesn't get impaled, they just bypass that completely. What Patterson said he was going to do originally was that he was going to make it look like she got her hand chopped off. That he was going to make it look like she just got a robotic hand. A lot like Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. But I do have to say the most interesting character in the movie, in both versions of Ahsoka, is the character of Baylan Skoll. The only true masculine character in this series actually, in this movie. And he's played by the late great actor Ray Stevenson, who passed away not long after filming on this show was completed. I guess you could say that Baylan Skoll is an antagonist, but he comes across as kind of sympathetic. He doesn't come across as cruel. He doesn't consider himself a Jedi, but he's not quite a Sith. In fact, he's a bit like Liam Neeson's character in Batman Begins, in the fact that he's doing what he thinks is right for the future of his people. And he comes across as a father figure to his apprentice, Shin. He's very much a mentor to her. So yeah, he's definitely the most interesting character in this show, I think. And he has a great physical presence, and he has some great lightsaber fights with Ahsoka. How much you enjoy this movie depends on whether you're a fan of the Clone Wars animated series and the Rebels animated series. Now, being a fan of the Clone Wars animated show, I did notice a lot of references. Like, there's a flashback or a dream sequence where Ahsoka imagines herself as being a child during the Clone Wars, where she was basically leading troopers despite the fact that she was only 10 or 15 years old. But it's a very well realised sequence, and they even brought back Tamara Morrison to voice the clone troopers. One of the most talked about aspects of the Ahsoka show and this movie is the extended cameo by Anakin Skywalker. They actually brought back Hayden Christensen for this, and they de-aged him a little bit, and it's good to see him back again. Like the whole dream sequence where Ahsoka falls into this kind of like netherworld, the world between worlds, which is something which is established in the Rebels TV show, but which is changed in this version. It's one of the best aspects of this movie. There's some great lightsaber action here as Anakin kind of mentors her, and it's kind of left up to your imagination as to whether he's a ghost, whether he's a Force ghost, or whether it's just all playing out in Ahsoka's head as she's near death after being beaten by Baylan Skoll. One of the issues I and many fans had with the original series version of Thrawn is that he came across as a bit of an idiot. Like I said before, Thrawn is very much a very, very intelligent antagonist in the books. He just didn't come across as very threatening at all. Whenever something didn't go his way, he was kind of saying, oh, I accounted for that. In the original version of this TV series, he calls Ahsoka a Ronin, which is a Japanese phrase for a student without a master. And as soon as that happened in the original show, I was thinking, how would he know what a Ronin is? That's a Japanese phrase. Star Wars is set in a galaxy far, far away. To call her a Ronin just doesn't make sense. But in this version, Patterson wisely cuts that out. There are some excellent lightsaber fights. There's a lot of action in this movie version. One of the best fights actually is the one between Ahsoka and Baylan Skoll. And amazingly enough, considering that this is Disney, where females can't lose, she actually gets beaten by Baylan Skoll. But there's a big fundamental flaw in the plot that neither version, whether it's the TV series or this movie version, can fix. The fact is that Sabine goes to all this trouble to go to the other side of the galaxy to get her friend Ezra back. Apparently they're just buddies. There's no romance between them all. It just makes you wonder why she went to all this trouble. And the fact is, by doing this, the villains won. The reasoning for Sabine going to all this trouble to bring Ezra back, despite the fact they're just buddies, it's interesting because it's like there's no romance allowed in Star Wars anymore. Not in the Disney era anyway. Because in the original George Lucas era of Star Wars, romance was a big theme. I mean, there was Han and Leia in the original trilogy. There was Anakin and Padme in the prequel trilogy. In the new Star Wars movies and TV shows, it seems that romance is completely forbidden. I wonder why. I mean, the only time Disney push for love and romance is when it's between LGBTQ plus R2D2 C3PO people. I don't know, it's just this stupid agenda that they're pushing. Spoiler alert, at the end of this movie, Thrawn wins. He basically makes it back to the Republic galaxy and strands Sabine and Ahsoka behind. Sabine, going to all this trouble to bring Ezra back, unleashes a new threat on the Republic galaxy. It's all her fault. And the funny thing is, she doesn't pay a price. Thematically speaking, it would have made sense if she died. She's got a lot to answer for. Because, again, it's like they're trying to justify the sequel trilogy that comes later in this timeline. Because it looks like this story makes it look like the whole reason that the Republic falls is because of Sabine Wren. This story sets up Thrawn as a major antagonist for later on down the road that will possibly lead to the Republic falling. It's very weird how this story doesn't hold her accountable. There are way too many changes for me to mention here, but I'm just going to mention some of my favorites. Patterson adds Sith eyes onto Shin. At one point, her eyes glow yellow, like Sith do in the original movies, and that was a nice little touch. A small but nice little touch. One of the improvements Patterson made with the Obi-Wan show is that he added John Williams music, and this version he does the same. When Ahsoka goes to the Netherworld, or the world between worlds, Patterson uses Anakin's theme, composed by John Williams from The Phantom Menace. Very appropriate use of score. Thrawn is definitely more threatening in this version. He doesn't make silly mistakes. They cut out a lot of his silly lines, like at one point in the original series he lost 2 TIE fighters, and when he was told this, he said, "Oh, I was planning for that. Acceptable outcome." Yeah, right. Oh, the biggest change. I think the biggest change with the climax. Because in the original TV series, they established that Thrawn was building, or that he was creating zombie stormtroopers. He had these witches working for him, and they brought these stormtroopers back from the dead when Ahsoka and her friends killed them all. And that was so stupid. I mean, they're basically Walking Dead stormtroopers. It just means they're just as useless as ever. They're just slower. I mean, you just killed them and you could just run away from them, like, you know, I mean, it's not like they can eat you. And he cuts that out entirely, which is good. The final fight between Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth is very well done, but also Patterson adds a very nice touch to Morgan's death in the fact that instead of getting run through, Patterson edits it in such a way he adds a little bit of effects here to make her look like she's been beheaded. And as soon as that happened, I just went, ugh, There's a scene in the original series where Ezra makes it back to the New Republic. He uses a stolen Imperial shuttle, he gets on board a ship, and he comes down this ramp with his helmet on, and he nearly gets shot, which didn't make sense. And this version, Patterson removes the helmet and puts the actor's face on instead to make it look like he didn't put on a helmet. It's a small but it's effective touch. But my overall verdict on the Patterson cut of Ahsoka is that it's a movie well worth watching. If you like the original TV series, you'll probably enjoy this even more. If you didn't like the original series, I would say watch this movie and give it a chance, because it's definitely an improvement. It's definitely the best version of this particular Star Wars story. So that's my review of the Patterson cut of Ahsoka. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please click the like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Click the bell for notifications. Share this video out there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.